Hey Faith family, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast at Calvary Bible, where we go beyond the Sunday sermon to explore some rabbit holes and to bring some biblical truths to the surface. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. All right, welcome back to the Beyond Sunday podcast. Randy, thanks for being with me again.
Good morning.
You're going to thank me for this.
I bet.
I got a joke.
Oh, please.
What is the most condescending bear?
It's got to be humble something.
A panda.
That's not good. Is that from your daughter?
No, that was not a Maddie joke.
Okay.
I
Because I don't want to offend your girls.
No.
I don't want to be mean to them.
No, you said that wasn't good. I think that was actually pretty funny. That one got a chuckle out of me. So brought it to the table. Just throwing it out there.
It was really good.
You guys are welcome to use that.
Excellent.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if you pull that out.
Oh my. You think?
Yeah, you're in one of those places, you're sitting with someone and you're talking and you say, hey, I heard a funny joke the other day. My colleague, a panda.
I can't even think of any time conversing with any of my friends that I say, hey, I got a joke for you. That's just not where I go.
Maybe you're at a zoo.
I'm too serious.
You're at a zoo
Everything's
and you see
too
a
serious.
panda and that's what brings it up in your mind.
That could happen.
Did I ever tell you my flamingo joke?
Please.
My wife told me that I needed to stop impersonating a flamingo. So I had to put my foot down.
Oh,
There we go.
my.
That's a funny one too. All right.
Aren't you glad you're listening?
Aren't you? I bet they are glad.
You think?
All right. Let's get into it. We
Okay.
were in the heart of the Bible.
Yeah.
The law and the prophets
Yeah.
summed up in this. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Followed by the wide and the narrow gates. So you pointed it out, and I just think it's fascinating. And we don't think about it often when we're reading our Bibles, the subtitles that are there, and how the English Bibles, break our text up.
Yeah.
Actually, for my devotional readings, I read out of a Reader's Bible, which has nothing.
Right.
No cross references, no verse markings,
Right.
no
Isn't that
subtitles. It's the only thing it marks is the chapter.
Yeah.
So if I'm in Matthew 7, I know I'm somewhere in Matthew 7. And it does change the way that you read. And it's even got like a nice block format, not the two columns. Just it changes
nice.
the way that you read your Bible a little bit. But anyway, our Bible is shaped, most of ours, two columns, subtitles, verses, etc. And it does seem to be like a shift in the sermon here. There's a change.
Yeah.
You marked the first word in verse 12, so kind of summing up where we've been so far. And then the shift in verse 13 kind of starts to, like, we're heading downhill. The end of the sermon is coming. So what?
Four warnings.
Yeah. What's the deal with what's going on there in that shift? And you may have mentioned it Sunday, but
I did. So I think that one of the things for us to think about, putting scripture like this into practice beyond Sunday is that verse 12 is a very simple summary of all of Jesus' teaching so far. So if you were saying, okay, I need a barometer for my Christian walk this week, use verse 12. Just make sure that this week you're treating others the way you wish they would treat you. That is distinctly Christian when that is a faith-based response. It's not just moralism, because this is all based upon this is a relationship with Jesus giving you the ability to do something that you could not do on your own, and so that in any of the circumstances that you find yourself this week, can you put into practice verse 12? So that if it truly is, if the word "so" is functioning as I think it is, taking us back through the whole sermon, then this is a good way to what do you call it? Just gauge your faith journey this week. How am I treating people this week?
Right. And is there a I almost wondered, and maybe you thought about it, if you were going to handle that two different sermons, because I was looking at your subtitles again too. Point number 1, a summary of the Christian life,
yeah.
And then point 2, where the Christian life begins,
yeah.
Verses 13 and 14.
Yeah.
So, what's the connection there? Is there much of a connection?
I don't think so. I honestly don't. I think what I had to do is I had to decide I'm not going to spend a whole sermon on verse 12 because it becomes, from my methodology, it just becomes too tedious.
Yeah.
A lot of preachers would do that. They would spend they could spend more than one sermon, for instance, on verse 12. But that's just not the way I'm wired. And I don't think it's the best way really to get a sense of Matthew when you're trying to do a series like we are. So I made a choice that I would do them together. I think because we do have a summary, but then we have this sort of this initial, are you in type of thing. That's the best I could do. I really don't think there's a tight connection. I don't know. It's not listed here in this electronic version, but your scripture, does it break 12 from 13?
In a paragraph, yeah.
So it has a paragraph by itself.
Yep.
But not a separate heading.
Not a separate heading.
That's the thing that was kind of weird when I looked at that. And I think when I was asking the folks on Sunday to take a look at their text. So there again, for whatever reason, the English, maybe they only had a quota for the number of headings they could use. I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't think that there's a strong connection.
Okay. All right. So let's get a little practical here. I was thinking about can anyone oppose this? What's the opposite philosophy or mindset to just do unto others? Just treat others as you would want to be treated. So it almost seems like you can't argue against that, but I think you can.
Yeah.
What would be the opposite?
You may have a better read on this than I do. So I appreciate the thought of that. So I think one of the things that I think we want to ask ourselves trying to live the Christian faith this week is, why wouldn't I do this? Why would I treat people differently than I would want to be treated? And my answer to that is because of my selfishness.
Yeah.
So, and I may not be tracking your thought at all. How would you oppose this? I could see either a non-Christian or a struggling Christian saying, it's not in my best interest to treat someone this way. Let's use a big one, forgiveness. Yeah. So if I would want you to forgive me, well, therefore I should forgive you. That is, by the way, in the context of the Sermon on the Mount. There's a lot about forgiveness. There's a lot about extending mercy. Yeah. So I could easily say, it's not in my best interest to forgive you right now.
It allows the upper hand to stay.
Yeah.
You retain the power.
Yeah. So is that what you're after as far as how would you oppose? What's a contrast to this rule? As I learned, I didn't realize how prevalent this is in every culture. It seems like every culture and every religion recognizes this golden rule. Yeah,
it does seem to come out,
especially with the negative. Whatever you hate, when it's done to you, don't do that to others. It's sort of that's the more prevalent reading.
Right.
Jesus is the one that gives the positive.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about through the Old Testament, these nations that are taking over other nations and moving, they're not doing unto the other nation what they would want to be done to them. It's a power grab. If you're the more dominant force, you go get it.
Take it.
You get it because that's going to enlarge your reach. I was just doing a little bit of reading on Nietzsche, and he opposed this do unto others. Yeah, pretty staunchly.
On what basis?
That same kind of mindset, just exploiting the weak.
Yeah.
The strong will survive kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the more I thought about it too, you're thinking about power, right? A lot, and the question maybe then is, what is the most powerful way to rule. And so many people, you'll see that maybe in the business world or whatever, the way you lead a relationship, you lead your family, you lead whatever. Am I going to domineer over somebody and inflict
your will,
my will because I'm more powerful than them? Or am I going to influence and lead them by treating them as I would want to be treated?
Yeah.
And one person, I mean, they're not going to agree. But,
right.
I mean, I think Jesus lays the argument here for us to say, care for, if you run a business, care for your employees like you would want them to care for you.
Right. And you can see, right, that if we talk about pure selfishness or a power trip that you raised, well, but the ultimate authority that we're dealing with here is Jesus and his kingdom. So you can see that this is a person, the person that is being transformed by Christ can do verse 12 because they have laid down their authority, gladly submitting to, which was one of the ways in which we defined that entering through that narrow gate. So in this sense, virtually every instruction of Jesus is a way a way into that gate. I mean, that's what we're saying when we enter that narrow gate, and we're not there yet, but the link is there. Entering the narrow gate is my saying Jesus is going to dictate. Jesus is my authority for living. And he told me not to be on a power trip, but to treat others like I would want to be treated.
Okay, so let's get to verses 13 and 14. The gate. This, you kind of flipped the gate in on me a little bit. I was always reading that text thinking the gate being like the gates of heaven, like that's the final, my life is this journey, and when I die, am I going to be going through the narrow gate? But you kind of put it at the beginning where the Christian life begins. Why would you read it that way?
Because Jesus is talking to people and he's telling them, get in now. So he's not saying anything about the end. He's actually saying, you're listening to me, and I'm just starting to tell you how things go in my kingdom. So you have to be prepared to go through this narrow gate with me. That's why I would put it that way.
Gotcha. I think the reason I maybe thought about it the way I did was because speaking of the way to the gate, but the way, go ahead.
Okay, well, but so if I just ask you, and this is really interesting too, notice the sequence in Jesus' teaching. Which comes first?
The gate.
And then the
way.
Yeah. So, and I'm not the first one to see that observation, obviously, but that's one of those interpretive moves. It's like Jesus did that on purpose. So what we're looking at is not we are looking at an entry point.
Gotcha.
And it's very restricted because it's based upon I'm the new authority. Now I forgot this. I hadn't forgot it, but you and I haven't covered this for a long time. Do you remember the sermon that you did early on the Sermon on the Mount, where you talked about a lot of the parallels between Jesus and Moses? Remember that? So I forget when that was. So
that was actually right before the Sermon on the Mount, I think.
But it was right.
It's in the beginning of Matthew.
That's right. That's right. We hadn't even got to the sermon yet, but Matthew is setting us up for this. So when you're reading the Sermon on the Mount, this is Jesus saying, "This is the new law." Go back to the law and the prophets for a moment. The Sermon on the Mount is Jesus giving us, "I'm the new lawgiver." So I am like I'm the greater Moses. And the sermon is a classic example of that.
Okay. He's recreating in something in us that he's calling us to. That brought to mind, last week I brought up the ambassador, right? One of my scholar friends.
Yes, that's right.
William Branch. So that brought to mind another song. Back in the day, Switchfoot, one of their early, probably their most well-known early albums, was titled A New Way to Be Human. And I was thinking about the name of that song, and it's a unique song. The lyrics are good enough, but just that phrase in and of itself, a new way to be human. Christ is calling us to live in a way that is radically different than the world around us. And it's distinctly new.
It is.
It's fresh.
Could I listen to Switchfoot on WDAC?
By now, you might be able to.
You think I could?
This is going back to the late
Yeah, okay.
late 90s,
All
I
right.
think. I don't know if they're playing late 90s music or not.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask Bill Patton. He would know.
I bet he won't.
All right, so that's that's just where my mind went.
Sure.
What Jesus is calling to, this narrow gate. Once I'm through it, the way is now going to be, how's it described? Hard. Is that's the only adjective there?
It's the only one that's there.
Okay, so it's a hard way, and submitting my life to Jesus, giving him my day, giving him all the things we've talked about, my finances, my time, my family, you name it.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing. And like you said in the sermon, when you're in the minority, right? We're living as a minority people here in this world. And so the minorities pretty often gets a difficult path.
Yeah.
So we can expect that.
Yeah. I want us to remember that this is the first of 4 warnings.
Mm-hmm.
Each of the warnings that we're going to cover in the weeks to come, it's the first of 4. They're contrasting pairs. So in this case, you've got 2 gates or in 2 ways that are contrasting here in the first warning. We know that those who find the hard way are few. So that warning is for us. So if you're thinking about your faith walk, your faith journey beyond Sunday this week, we all need to make sure that we are in the few category. And the way to tell that, the way to know that is to make sure that Jesus is your authority, that strict gate. You've gone through that strict gate and you've gladly submitted to his rule. Well, that means that everything about your life today and this week is directed by him. Mm-hmm. So it takes us back to every avenue of life.
Yeah.
Are we through that restrictive gate of Jesus' authority?
No, that's a great question.
So I didn't say this. So let me do a couple of things.
Go ahead.
So it's scary, but it's possible that every congregation has this ratio. Mm-hmm. Think about our faith family now. Mm-hmm. It's saying that the many are going in the wide gate. Mm-hmm. The few. So just think about how scary this is for us personally in our work. So, and for you too, just think through the ratio. And so the warning is designed for all of us to take stock of how much does Jesus rule our lives. I wanted to say, and I forgot on Sunday, but Chuck Swindoll, back when he was still at the church out in California, Fullerton, the Evangelical Free Church of Fullerton. Okay. Chuck Swindoll said that the longer he served that faith family, the less, the more he realized that less and less of his listeners were Christian. So the longer he served, the more he realized that less and less of his congregants were Christian.
What did he attribute that to?
He's watching people come to church, profess Christ, but not change. So that was, and I was, if I remember correctly, I was in seminary at the time I heard that.
Okay.
That shook me.
I bet.
As a young pastor, because I'm thinking, as a young pastor in training, I'm thinking, wow, that's Chuck Swindoll. Mm-hmm. He's saying that, and I know he preaches the Bible. Mm-hmm. That really struck me as a young man. I thought this is a very difficult task to bring people through that narrow gate. So that really.
It's a sobering thought.
That's the word. Yeah.
So, it really is. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add there?
No.
Okay.
That's a lot.
Well, I'll close with a little story I heard. I was reading about a teacher out in the Los Angeles region. I want to say it's back in like the 40s. Challenged his class. I don't know if this is a Christian school, but I don't know. Yeah. It might not even be real, but I think the principle's there. So challenges the class to go home and for 10 days live by this golden rule.
The golden rule.
But not tell anybody. Just do it and see what happens. And overwhelmingly, the students came back and were like, it's unbelievable, the change, the relationships, the interaction. And so that's one of those,
So good.
it's this, backwards way of thinking where Nietzsche's mindset makes a lot of sense. If I've got the power,
If you're thinking of survival,
dominate, just take it.
Yep.
But the power to influence relationships and change your spheres of influence by just being compassionate, sympathetic, kind, loving, generous, is going to change things.
And it might be one of the best ways for us to challenge us on Beyond Sunday is to say, think about the relationships that you have in your world where you're having a hard time to do verse 12.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then that's where you adjust and get through that strict gate, that very narrow gate. And then maybe that is the best way for us to think it through.
Yeah.
Who am I struggling with the most to extend the golden rule?
I like it.
And where does Jesus come into play?
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. All right. That should be a wrap for today.
Good.
Next week, we're going to be in verses 15 through, do you know?
Yeah, 15 through 20.
Okay. The
second warning.
My subtitle
2 trees
in my English Bible says a tree and its fruit.
Yeah, so 2 trees.
There should be trees and their fruits.
If it was
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you guys when we see you Wednesday, Sunday, all over the place at the grocery store. Okay.
On the ball field.
Yeah, at the ball field. Yeah. Saw a couple people yesterday at the ball field.
Yeah.
It's good. As always, if you have any questions about this podcast or one of the ones in the past or the sermon that you're listening to on Sunday, just send those questions into podcast@cbcmj.com. Rattle that off pretty quick. I could spell it for you guys, but you're above average. So send those questions in there. We'd love to interact with them. And Randy and I will do this next week. All right. See you. We love you guys. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode. And remember, our Sunday sermons are meant to lead us to a life of worship beyond Sunday.